Hi everyone, it's Elaine Hamilton and Ella Grundy again for part two of autism. It's not so much autism and Reiki. This one, it might be, but it's more autism from Ella's perspective in answering some of the questions that you guys have come up with. So thanks so much for some of the questions that we got. And we got some such nice feedback from the last video. So we thought we would do another one. Say hi, Ella.
Hi, Ella. Hello.
So, should
Me
we just
again.
jump in? Should we just, or do you want to, do you have anything, like how was it um doing the last video? Any comments on that or anything before we start?
Um, no, I think it was really nice to see a lot of people relate. Like, I think when we talked about the whole like floaty versus grounded thing, I was kind of like, is anyone gonna know what I'm talking about? Because it's such a specific way. But there were a few comments, people be like, I know exactly what you mean. And I think it was really nice to see that people actually they found it helpful
Yeah.
rather than just me, yapping about random stuff. It's like people actually relating to, which I thought was very nice. And lots of good questions as well. So
Yeah,
should be good this
exactly.
time.
But I think that's part of the thing to almost identify with, like some of the feedback that I've been getting as well is and some of the questions that we've got in terms of, once you realize you're autistic, how do you make that kind of shift? So we're going to get onto that. But I think maybe we start with, because there's been a few questions around dysregulation um, and executive functioning. So I don't know if, and in the last video, I think you said you must have talked about like kind of the procrastination, and then you're just not really quite, and then suddenly you get it done super, super fast. Uh,
Mm.
so is there anything else? I mean, that aside, like, have you noticed anything to help with that? Have you noticed anything else that works for you? Yeah.
Because we talked about like how I kind of use Reiki as a big part of my regulation as well. But like, yeah, aside from that, um, I think the main thing is, well, once I got diagnosed, I actually learned what that meant. Because I think before I was basically dysregulated the entire time and just didn't have a word for it, didn't realize, thought that was normal. So I think getting diagnosed and actually being able to name it was already like so useful.
Yeah.
But I think the main thing for me is kind of the stopping. No, like it's like to stop forcing yourself to basically, I always say it like perform the human task. Like instead of doing it like how, the world neurotypically wants you to, doing it in doing everything autistic way rather than a way that, you don't fit in, doesn't suit you, I think helps so much. So like for me, when I got diagnosed, I made a specific, not plan, but like I specifically was like, okay, there are things I want to do to actually make my life fit me rather than what it's supposed to. So now I have lots of things like creating safe spaces that have like sensory regulation. So like for me, my house is very quiet, which is nice, but like I have specific spaces that I go to, things that can fulfill your sensory regulation, I think is really a big part of the dysregulation because I think before diagnosis, I was always overwhelmed. I was always like, wearing clothes that might make me uncomfortable, but I thought this is what you're supposed to wear, or being in noisy environments and not wearing headphones because like, well, everyone else is doing it, and like forcing myself into very overwhelming situations because everyone else was doing it. So I think creating those safe spaces and letting yourself have that sensory regulation. So like for me, I tend to always have a stim toy in my hand now. I realize the feeling of like
So
blankets on me is
I'm just
really
going to
good.
pause you. So show your stim toys. What does that mean? So you got a little squeezy
Oh
thing.
yeah. Yeah, actually, because a lot of people always also ask about like what stimming is.
Hmm.
Um, and it's kind of something everyone actually does, but for autistic people, stimming is meant to act, well, not meant to, but it's kind of described as helping executive dysfunction a lot more. So I think for a lot of neurodivergent people, and for me especially, I feel like I've got a million trains of thoughts, a million things going on in my head all the time. And I always had this kind of urge to like move and do something. And I feel like when so much of the time we repress that, and like at school, I was always told stop fidgeting and pay attention. But for me, if I'm sat there looking at the board, or if I'm sat there doodling and listening, I'm much more likely to retain information while I'm doodling.
Yeah.
But it looks like I'm distracted or bored or not interested. So it's kind of like that idea of when you almost plug some of those different, crazy thoughts going on, it allows you to actually like slow down and focus on what's important. So it helps with that kind of, brr feeling because instead of thinking, don't fidget, don't fidget, don't fidget, I'm actually just doing it. And so now I'm not having to think about not doing it. Um, and like for me, I like there's also stimming is, physical, but it could be auditory, listening to the same song over and over again. For me, I love visual stimming, so like my lava lamps, like just watching them for ages is so like, "Whoa," and has the same effect for me. Um, so I think for me, letting myself stim just whenever has helped me so much with dysregulation because I'm not thinking about suppressing it all the time and it adds another weight and you just let yourself do it. It kind of takes that all away. Um,
You're really
like I know,
listening. So like really listening to your body when your body's like,
mhm,
okay, shake this arm and you actually shake
yeah,
it,
just do it.
or stand up and start wiggling your body, then actually do it rather than going, oh, I'm going to
Mhm.
look stupid or I'm going to look silly
Yeah,
or whatever. But
yeah,
but now you've got a place. So realizing, oh, I'm autistic. It's almost like I'm supposed to do this, right? It's
yeah.
okay.
This is actually what's normal
It's
for my
normal
type of
for,
brain.
yes. So it's normal for my brain to be like this. And I need to stop pretending that I've got a neurotypical brain and trying
Mhm.
to copy what a neurotypical brain does because my brain just doesn't do that.
Yeah, that's what I kind of mean about like performing the human tasks. It's like the things that life thinks or people, society think I'm supposed to do, but actually that's just not what I'm like at all. So
Right.
it's almost like, yeah, exactly that, really listening to what your body actually needs, because what, society will tell you it needs is probably wrong because it's like speaking two different dialects. Like I'm not going to understand what you're saying, even if you think I should.
Did it take
So,
you a while to figure that out? Because there must have been some unlearning that happened because of all those years of being told like to sit still. And then when you start like
mm.
wiggling a lot, did it take you a while to figure out what was what your body wanted and what your mind was just telling you you
I
needed?
think I still struggle with that because I was diagnosed years ago, but I only really got stim toys a few years ago. Because again, that whole idea of being a stim toy, you think it's for kids, and they're designed like they look childish a lot of the time. So I just felt a bit embarrassed being like 20 years old and playing with toys in the classroom. So I think it took me a
I'm
long
sitting here
time.
like fiddling with
Yeah,
this with
see?
I'm
It's,
always
it's
fiddling.
like it's so fun. Yeah, at work we give stim toys out to everyone, and everyone just like, wow.
People
It's
love
quite
it,
fun.
but even neurotypical brains love it.
That's what I mean. Like
Yeah.
everyone stims. Like if you have a song stuck in your head and you're singing the same part of it, like neurotypical people do it all the time. But I think often, just for autistic people, it has more of a regulating and more
Yes.
useful. Like it's not a distraction. Whereas a lot of times, neurotypical people will like fidget with something when they're bored, as opposed to help their brain function. But yeah, now I got really obsessed with these squishy ones, and I have 10 different types now, just of these types, and I've got a million more as well. But yeah, it took me years to actually kind of accept it, and even today, I still sometimes note like when I get really excited, I get like I want to like flap my hands around like crazy. And I used to do it as a kid,
Yeah, you
but I
did.
stopped doing it. And then the other day, I was in public reading a book, and it was really good, really exciting. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then I was just like, because I didn't want to because there's a bunch of people walking past me and I'm going to look insane. And so even then I stopped doing it and then just kind of squealed instead because I didn't know. I was like, it's really funny. And I think, even then I still sometimes I'm kind of repressing it because I don't want to look weird. But I kind of wish I didn't because like, who cares? I'm never going to see any of these people again and I'm happy. So like, show it. Because I also think there's something specifically called autistic joy, which is a very specific feeling to autistic people. Because, like, autistic special interests, stimming, that kind of feeling, it's a very, I can't really describe it, but I know exactly what it means. And I think most autistic people will. And it's kind of different to like just being happy. Like, it's happy because of like your autistic brain in a weird way. So it's like the feeling that want to stem or like, you have a special interest in reading something and finding out more about it. It's really exciting. And so I think stimming often is a part of expressing, it's not just when you're feeling stressed and want to regulate, but it's also expressing happiness. And I think that is especially what is repressed. And that's what I shoved, like, try minimize the most is my happy stimming, which is kind of a bit of a shame. Like I wish wasn't seen as weird in public. But and again, if I saw someone in public happily jumping around, I'd be like, oh, they're having a great time. Like, I wouldn't judge it. And I don't think most people do, but it's kind of is exactly that years and years of ingrained, this is weird, be normal, pay attention thing. Ooh.
It is funny actually you say that because I think that as well. I think that people in general are not encouraged to express joy.
Mm.
It's such a weird thing that it's like that's childish. It's childish.
Mm.
Because you know how children, they just express joy, like they just laugh and laugh, or they just jump, or they skip, or they,
Yeah.
all that kind of thing. And then somewhere along the line, we've been told that's, well, you're an adult now, you have to be serious. And so
Yeah.
then we kind of like, you're right, we suppress that. And I think everybody does that to some degree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so you got stimming as a way of helping you with your regulation. And are there any other things that you're doing that just help you to like stay on track with something?
Well, I think for me as well, like all the other senses, so like headphones have been a massive difference for me. Like wearing headphones in public. And now I realize I don't leave the house without my noise cancelling headphones. And when I got my ears pierced like a couple months ago, I couldn't wear my big headphones for about a month or two.
Mm.
And oh my God, it was crazy. Like I didn't realize like the world is so loud. Like I couldn't go. I was like, I literally couldn't go outside. I couldn't go on public transport. I couldn't do anything because like, I just ended up like making them lower so that they would just sit over my earrings because like I actually cannot. The world is such a crazy place, and I realized how much I relied on having the headphones for that regulation. And I don't always need to wear them. Like when I'm with other people, I often don't. But then when I'm with other people, I tend to do, go like I can do something I'm more comfortable with, and I have that person to help me do, other aspects like navigate or something like that. So I find having like actually listening to those sensory needs as well. So if you feel like you need to put headphones on, put headphones on.
Mm.
If like I have days where I just feel like I have things I need to go outside, I need to do something, but I can't, it just doesn't feel like it would go well. I feel like it would overwhelm me more than just staying inside, letting yourself have that rest. Because that was a big problem I had where I just wanted to go, like, oh, everyone else can do it, just do it. And then I'd come home completely dysregulated and, like, start crying and, just have a big crash every day until I went, actually, I don't have to go outside. I can just chill.
Yeah,
And like having the guilt-free rest, I think is such a big part of the regulation as well.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
exactly. Now, one of the questions was like struggling with decision making.
mm.
Do you resonate with that? Do you struggle to make decisions?
It took me 20 minutes sitting on my bed this morning to figure out what to wear. I don't know what happened. I was just like clothes, and I think about I couldn't figure out weather, comfort, what I want. Like it was, I find decision making really hard. I think I'm one of the most indecisive people I know. Like
So
when I played a game with my friends, and it was like point to who you think is most indecisive, and I couldn't decide. So
how
then just turned and pointed at me. I was like, oh, well,
So what do you think
I,
that is? Is that just too much information that you're
I think it
having?
is. Like I feel like there's too many things going on. And I feel like I factor in every possible factor. So
Mm,
when I'm picking out my clothes, I'm thinking about like, I really want to wear this thing, but how am I going to make that work with the weather? Today I'm going to be inside for this time, but I'm going to go outside into these specific areas. It's going to be too hot to wear. And like, I think about every single aspect. And then I'm like, oh, I really want to wear this top, but it's cropped. And so I'm going to be cold. But if I wear a jumper, it's going to feel uneven and I'm not going to like that. And like, then by the time I get through that one train of thought, and that's only one outfit, I've decided, right, I can't wear that. I then have to start again, and then by the time I do that two more times, I've forgotten the first one, and I feel like I just think about every single outcome, which I think sometimes is a good thing because it means I'm prepared. So I think often it helps me to not overthink, but it helps me to think about every outcome because then it's like, okay, if something goes wrong, I've prepared for it. And I feel like in my head that helps me a lot in situations. But then for small decisions like what to wear, it's really not the most helpful. Um, yeah, it's very annoying.
and you wouldn't just have the thought like because as you're talking, I'm thinking I change my outfit about 5 times a day,
Mhm.
depending on so I have inside clothes, I have outside
Mhm.
clothes, and then I
Yeah,
have
me too.
clothes that I might just pop downstairs to go to the supermarket in, and then I have other clothes that I go to my Vietnam class in, and I have you know what I mean? So like today, I'm
Mhm.
just trying to think this is my fourth outfit today.
See, I tend to swap between two. Like I'll when I get home, I wear my indoor clothes like that are specific to that day, and then when I go out, I wear the outdoor clothes that are specific to that day, which
Right.
doesn't necessarily have to be, but in my head, it's just like I wear this specific thing when I'm inside, and then my outside clothes have to be all day outside, but like they don't. But
Okay,
in
so
my head, they do.
we can't actually help. We can't really help with that question because you're just as bad as this
I'm
as
too
the
indecisive.
question, right? So
Well, actually,
basically,
I do notice some things that can help with that still. Like I know I'm very indecisive, but I think some things that help is almost like giving it to other people sometimes. Like if I can't decide, I'm like, clearly I don't care
you
that
decide.
much. So pick a hand. And then
Oh,
I'll just have decision one,
yes.
decision two. I do that all the
You do that
time.
all the time.
Because what I've realized is if I'm so indecisive about it, like it there is no way I would be able to go through every possibility. There will be something wrong with every single outfit choice, for example,
Yeah,
or every single movie, because it takes me hours to pick a movie. Like there will be something I dislike about all of it. So if it's not going to be too overwhelming, like if it's something that is too overwhelming, it's not,
it's not
ignore
on
that
the
one.
list anyway.
If I've got like there's four, I'll often go pick a limb and stick my arms out and get like my partner to like pick one. Um, and I noticed that the thing I like about it is if like it's pick a hand, person picks this one, I'm like, actually, I don't want to do that. Then I know I want to
Then
do
you
this one.
know.
So great. Or
Yes.
if I don't care, I'll just do it anyway. So
Yeah.
it kind of gets that. I think decision paralysis is a really big problem for a lot of neurodivergent people. And for me, it's like I just get stuck in that. Yeah, but what if it rains and I'm not prepared? Or what if this happens? And I go through everything. So at some point, just whatever, pick and
Yeah.
don't think about it. And so that's what I mean by not like getting someone else to go pick a hand. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, can be
That's
quite.
that's that's a really good point because you do that a lot. Yeah.
Mm. And they're kind of just do it, just pick one, don't think, and then you just start doing something. And I think that's what you often used to tell me, like you just kind of go start doing something. I'm like, okay, I often think, but I have to like fully go start, don't do it, don't think, do it, do it, do it. So I can't think because I'm too busy yelling at myself to not think, which kind of works.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's always a stressful thing anyway.
I think it's one of those things, like for me, I tend to notice now, and as I've got older, this happens more and more, where I don't even think about, like, for example, this morning I was out of bed before I realized I was getting up.
I could never do
It's
that.
so weird. It's like my body's moving, and I'm like, oh, I guess we're getting up now.
Yeah.
It's like the kettle's on. Oh, I guess we're making coffee now. So sometimes it is just allowing, like coming back to just allowing the body to do
Mm.
what it's doing because it knows what it wants to do, really.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, I noticed that. Like in the morning when I wake up, I often just lie there. Then at some point, I'm getting up. And it's never immediately, it usually is after a while. But I just kind of trust that I will get up when my body is ready to. And
It,
it usually works. Like yesterday, I spent an hour in bed before I got up. Today, 20 minutes.
yeah,
Like, for no reason other than my body just knows it's time.
yeah,
So I
exactly.
think it's not
Exactly.
stressing about that because it's
Yeah,
going to happen in the time it's going to happen anyway. So just let it be rather than go, oh my God, I should be out of bed by now. I'm like, yeah, but what else am I going to do? So,
yeah. And I guess if you really had to get out of bed, then you would set your alarm and then the alarm goes off. That's the decision made out of bed.
mm, yeah.
Yeah. So we had another question around pattern recognition, and we said we wouldn't talk too much about it because it's a bit difficult to describe. But one of the questions was because we were talking about how you feel you have very good pattern recognition, which I totally agree with. Um, and so maybe do you want to talk a little bit about that? What that means to you and how it's good, how it's bad?
Mm. So, yeah, when we talk about pattern recognition, it's kind of like, I mean, everyone has, some degree of pattern recognition. And it's basically that ability to recognize and make connections and correlations just in things. And for a lot of the time, that's just in the environment. So I notice for me, it kind of I've always thought I've had quite good pattern recognition, so often it's a good thing where like I'll notice like especially communication, like I'm really bad at picking up on social cues, but I can recognize when a pattern is different, which allows me to still keep in the loop, still know what's going on. Like if someone's acting different all of a sudden, I'll recognize, okay, this is different. I might not pick up that maybe they're really sad. I might not recognize that, but I'll know, okay, something's off. I can ask them about that.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of like that intuitive aspect we talked quite a lot about last time. And I think, we talked about watching TV shows and me basically going, oh, they did it immediately, or like knowing how the plot or what the twist would be. And that's kind of you recognize that person's acting different. They'd only act that way if this was this, and I kind of do that whole thing in my head, Which I guess isn't always good because it means I spoil it for myself half the time. But then I just realized, like, I was watching a show the other day and I immediately was like, oh, they did it. 8 episodes later, they did it. And I was a bit like, oh my God, no way. And I was like, I literally gaslit myself into thinking I was surprised. And then I was like, I knew that though. Why am I surprised? It's quite funny. Um, but I also noticed sometimes, pattern recognition is not always a good thing. So we were talking about like in environmental changes, for example, like I might notice if I'm hanging out with my friends, one of them is feeling really off and not feeling very well, and I just pick up on that, and all I feel is off and negative and like, just feel weird. Or like if I'm going to like my favorite room in the library to study and it's the same every time, but this time randomly an entire shelf is missing and there's a bunch of people I've never seen before sitting in my spot. Suddenly this difference, it's not just like, oh, sit somewhere else. It's like, but it's always the same. And I get very stuck on that black and white, but it should be this way, it should be this way. So now recognizing that's different, that move can suddenly be quite overwhelming.
Mm,
So I think a lot of the time pattern recognition is quite good because it does help you with a lot of aspects. And I think as well with autistic people often struggling with social cues and kind of all that stuff, it can be beneficial. But then also I notice that having good pattern recognition, I think makes me more overwhelmed
yeah,
sometimes because I'm noticing tiny differences
yeah.
that aren't usually there. Or especially something I've noticed is that neurotypical people love to say, I'm fine when they're not, right? And that like they clearly mean they're not fine. And so for me, if I'm recognizing all these tiny differences, but then they're going, I'm fine. I'm like, I feel gaslit because I'm like, but I know you're not, but you don't want to tell me. And I'm not sure if it's because I'm not asking the right questions. They just don't want to talk to me. They are fine, but they just, and I start to do that kind of overwhelming, overthinking, like, oh my God, I'm the problem thing. Um, so yeah, I think it's something that, there's patterns in everything.
Yeah.
So, and it's not even like you're manually doing it. I think it's just how, I think because a lot of, autistic brains tend to be more logical, it's just noticing that's different and not connecting much emotion to it, which can also, again, also be a negative thing. If you're noticing something's off and you tell someone you're acting weird, but they're actually sad and want comfort, that might seem like confrontation.
Mm,
So it's kind of sometimes good, sometimes bad,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah, so
But I
that's
think
interesting
also,
because so you can notice that somebody is acting differently, but
mm,
you can't pick up on the emotion. So you can't pick up on oh, they're sad.
I think when you know someone quite well, you can. But
Right.
like for me, I notice if someone's suddenly really quiet, but that's the thing, if someone's acting suddenly really quiet, that could be sad. They could be angry. They could be really excited. Don't, like, don't know how to express it. There's so many, I don't know. I really can't tell.
As you're talking,
So
I'm
for me,
like,
I just
there's absolutely no way. That's so different. That's really
like they're,
interesting.
they're so similar to me. Like,
That's
well, it's
so
all like because
interesting.
every individual shows emotions differently. So I can't rote learn every single one of those differences.
That's wow. That's kind of just freaked me out because I'm like, no, when someone's sad, you can feel it
I
in.
really struggle between sat crying and laughing. I really struggle with it. It looks so similar to me most like it takes me a good minute to figure it out
But
half the time.
you know what? I mean, I don't want to talk about family trauma here, but that's family trauma because our family masks by laughing. That's probably why.
True. I laugh when things happen that are like sad. Like, if I'm uncomfortable, I start laughing and people think I'm being really rude. I'm like, ooh.
Yeah, I know. No, I think that happens to be that's family trauma you're picking up on. You've learned that. But I wonder, this is interesting. Like I wonder, put in the comments if you also struggle with that because yeah, because we tend to so you've probably been trained that laughing is sadness and sadness is laughing because that's rampant in our
Maybe. But to me, I think it's often the facial expressions of laughing and crying are quite similar.
family.
Do you not think so? I always do, and I can never tell. Because some people laugh so differently. Like everyone's got a different laugh, different mannerisms, but people tend to cry pretty similarly. So it's like, how do I know if they're just being different or not? But you do kind of pick it up. So for example, like Cameron, so my partner, he has this thing where if he's upset, he'll go, if I ask him a question, like, are you okay? He'll go, mm-hmm, which is saying yes. And for so long, I was like, oh, it's fine. And now I've realized he only says mm-hmm when he's angry or upset about something.
Right.
So after time and knowing him for a while, I can now connect it to an emotion because patterns, every time he says this, he then is upset. So that is a connection I can make. And when you know someone, I think now I'm almost better at picking up those social cues because I've learned them as like
Right.
this is the rule. Whereas before, when the first times, few times he did it, I was like, oh yeah, means yes, so he's fine.
Yes. Got you. Got you. So you don't pick up on the underlying, what I would call the energetic. I mean, like for me,
Well, I think there is an energy thing as well, and that's what I was talking
yeah,
about earlier with the pattern recognition and feeling off. So it's almost
yeah,
like it's like the empathy without knowing why. So like I'll feel sad all day and be really confused, and then I'll find out like, oh, my friend who I've been with all day has felt sad but hasn't told me. So the problem with that is that I often think it's mine. Like I think and I do this all the time where I feel like I'm picking up people's emotions but not realizing it's their emotions.
yeah.
So it's like that
Yeah.
connection is a bit skewed, and then I just think it's mine. And like I've always had this issue.
But
Um,
that is empathy though. That's the
yeah,
definition of empathy, isn't it? Where you pick up on
yeah.
people's emotions and then you don't, your boundary is, it's almost like the key with empathy is being able to learn what's yours, what's not yours, and checking in with yourself to say, well, am I sad?
Mm,
And if I'm not, then this is clearly not mine. And
yeah,
I think that's a lifelong thing, really, for many of us.
yeah.
And for those of us attracted to this kind of thing, right? Reiki and stuff like that. We're attracted to it because of that, because we're carrying so much of other people's crap around. So
Mm.
exhausting. Yeah, interesting. I feel like we could keep talking around this for a long time, but I'm going to keep moving down. Otherwise, this is going to be the longest video on the planet.
Yeah.
But there were some interesting questions around late diagnosis and coming out as autistic, which I thought was such a cute way of putting it. Coming out as autistic, who do you tell, and when and how do you go about doing it?
Mm.
So I know you're like the lady who's asked this question is late. Like she's got kids and she's got family and she's got all this kind of thing. So like you were laughing before that for for a female, you were quite early diagnosed actually. But is there anything that you can say to that?
Yeah, so I think, my situation is a bit different because I feel quite lucky in the fact that like all my family and friends are supportive. And also I was diagnosed at an age where I kind of had to let people know. I was still at uni. I couldn't like not explain to like my parents why why all this stuff is happening. I need to explain, oh, I'm actually going through this process, like diagnosis process. Like for me, I felt like I was young enough that I had to keep you in the loop essentially, because I mean, you were basically the one that helped me get diagnosed. But I think the most important thing for that whole thing of coming out as autistic is you don't have to tell anyone.
Mm,
I think it sounds very selfish, but I think, being autistic, it can be scary to tell people. I've told people and had very bad responses. Like, remember, I got people trying to kick me out of housing because they thought I'm autistic, I'm too unstable, they don't know what I'm going to do next. And I'm like, what?
You're actually the most
So like
stable person I've ever met in my life.
I've had yeah, like bad experiences with telling people I'm autistic, or people like I remember tell people they don't believe me. They're just like, you don't look autistic. Like I've had that so many times. Um
You're too
I was
pretty
actually
to be
once
autistic.
told I was too pretty to be autistic.
I love
Someone told me
that.
that. So,
I just love
there
that
we go.
so much.
So funny. It's like, okay,
Booyah.
and you're too ugly to be neurotypical. I didn't say that, but but yeah, I think the most important thing is like it can be scary to tell people. You don't always know the reaction. That doesn't mean it's going to be negative. Most of the time, in my experience, it's been positive. But I think, and again, like this is a bit that sounds selfish, but tell people when it benefits you is what I've realized. Like when I went to uni and I went, okay, I don't want to mask as much. I want to make other autistic friends. I was very openly talking about being autistic. I told people like I'm autistic, I might need to leave early, I might, and so I hosted everything in my apartment so that I could just go to my room, I could keep people out, I could keep things in my way. And people knew that was a part of it, was because I was autistic. And like I just was very open about it because I wanted to make autistic friendships. I wanted to have like complete honesty with it. I didn't want it to be something people found out later and went wrong, for example. But I also think, telling people like interviews, I was asked a question at like a few weeks ago about do you tell people you're interviewing with a job to or something like that.
Mm,
And I thought that was a good question because I think it very much can depend.
yeah.
Like if you can get accommodations, again, that benefit you, I think tell people. Like when I go to the doctors, I make it very well known that I'm autistic, I might need this, I might need, and because I want people to create those accommodations because also they legally have to, so they can't discriminate against me for it. However, if I'm, bump into someone on the street and we start talking and they're, being a bit weird and judgmental, I might just kind of shut it down and walk away rather than be like, actually, I'm autistic. That's why this, because of like, it's not going to benefit me in any way to tell this person, and it might only lead in judgment.
Yeah.
Um, so like getting accommodations, wanting to find friends that understand, I think is where it can be good to tell people. But again, I think it's something that's very much personal.
Person.
Like there is no,
Yeah.
I also think this about like coming out with sexualities, you don't owe it to anyone to tell
Yeah.
them. And
Exactly.
I think being autistic, obviously if you're gay, you're not going to get certain accommodations at work because, it's a bit different. But if you're autistic, like there are certain accommodations, certain things you can get that can help you. So in that case, if you think you're going to be, it's going to be received well and you're going to get extra support that, helps you, I think that's, definitely a good place to think about, maybe telling people.
Yeah.
But, again, you don't owe it to anyone. You don't have to.
And actually,
So
when
I
you say at work,
think,
it depends on the country as well. Like the UK
yeah.
has very good laws in place, like
Mhm.
labor laws in place to make sure there's no discrimination around
They're
autism.
legally not allowed to.
Yeah.
Like they have to consider you like
But
normal.
in other countries, it could be quite discriminated against, and there's no comeback for it, right? So
Yeah.
like in a lot of Asian countries, there's just not the same level of support around that. So it kind of brings us on to the other question of culture. And it's interesting actually, because in some of the countries that we're talking about, like Asia, that have very poor like labor laws around disabilities. Well, I mean, I'm just saying this off the top of my head. I'm not a HR person, so hopefully I'm not too off on this, but um, there are other bits of the culture that actually really help autism. We were joking about this earlier, weren't we? And saying that often in Asia, specifically, like the China, so the influences of say Confucius and Confucianism. Am I saying that right? Whereby it's a lot more based on merit, it's based on education, it's based on respect, it's based on hierarchy. Actually, it and place and pattern in a sense has created in some of these countries a very autistic friendly environment, right? And then there's other cultures like the Western cultures that are very individualistic. And like you say, there's a lot of like, I'm fine, thank you, in in the
I
Brits
actually think like
stiff
British
upper lip.
idioms, yeah, British idioms I think have been the hardest for me to understand because there's this very big false friendliness that everyone does. It's really over the top, like, oh yeah, I'm doing great, I'm fine, oh, I'll give you a big hug. But like yeah, and I've noticed I struggle with it much more here. Whereas in Singapore, if I'm gonna go buy something from the cashier, they're not gonna ask me, it's much more blunt
There's no
and
chat.
direct, which Westerners think is rude. But for me, being autistic, I think it's great because it's just I don't, it's much far less energy, you know?
Yeah, yeah, it's just direct. Like
Yeah.
I think in especially the more Chinese-based cultures are in general a lot more direct in terms of
Mm,
and the language, but that's partly based on the language as well, right? Because the
yeah.
language structure is very direct.
I
And
think
then
there's a lot less fluff
yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah,
UK.
yeah, interesting.
Mm,
Um, so there was another question around masking. So I know in the last video we talked quite a lot about masking, but then the question was around people that you've known for a while and how has that been? And we did talk in the last video that, it wasn't so bad with, say, myself because you weren't doing it that much anyway. But did you notice around friends or other relatives? How was that?
mm. Like I think for me, I think I struggle a lot with unmasking in general. So like we said like in the last video, I talked about how it's almost as exhausting as masking itself.
Mm,
Um, and like getting described as more autistic. And I think for me, I definitely I found it really awkward when I was trying to unmask around people I've known for longer because I felt like they would think I was faking it. And I don't know, I got really in my head about it.
yeah,
And I think one of the things that I found the most helpful for trying to unmask around people who, you might feel weird or they might suddenly be like, you've never done that before. I think the thing I found the most helpful is to do it bit by bit. Like for me, because unmasking is tough, I feel like it became very ingrained in me like what to do that I kind of didn't really know where I was masking, where I, and it became really blurred almost, but still constantly exhausting. I think what I did was I specifically thought, okay, what is one thing to start with and want
Yeah.
to unmask? And for me, mostly that was kind of I looked at the communication aspect.
Yeah.
So trying to be more direct when I think it suits me. So when someone says something I don't understand, just ask them, oh, do you mean this? And being a lot more blunt, direct to help me, communicate more in my way. Because I think I've always been described as quite blunt. Like when I was a kid, a lot of kids at school didn't like me because I thought I was mean, but I was just being like blunt, and it did get me into trouble. But as a
It
kid, I didn't
did
really
get
consider
you
it
in
really blunt.
trouble.
Yeah, like kids really, and like my friend told me, if you don't like someone, you can't tell them. I'm like, but they asked me. Like if someone says, "Do you like me?" and I don't, I'm gonna say no. Now I probably wouldn't though, because now I realize like, oh, I might as well keep try and be
The
friendly.
little
But
white
why would I
lies.
pretend? I don't know. I still struggle with it. Like if we don't like each other, why are we pretending to like each other? Um, because that still confuses me. But I do it because again, it's more of like the Western culture does that a bit more. Um, but yeah, so even one thing like picking stimming, deciding you're gonna bring a fidget toy and stim in public or stim when other people are there, like starting small because I think not only does that help people adjust to it and also understand, but it also helps you. Because I think going full unmasking, it's as I mentioned, exhausting. You don't know where to start. It becomes very confusing. So I think actually just kind of bit by bit going, I'm gonna st like stimming for me is one of the I think the most successful thing I've done unmasking.
Yeah.
Like I have my lanyard with a bunch of like there's like a stim toy thing on it. And like, I often bring like the stim toys with me. And I just am a lot more fidgety. And I think I do that. I stim as much as I want to all the time now, almost, except for like that time I was really excited. Like I do still dull that stuff down. But that's often when I go out with my friends, go dancing. That's basically a night full of just loud big stimming because I'm dancing. So like I think that's why I like going out so much. It's just a night to stim and no one can judge you because everyone's doing it. Um, So I think
Dance
that's why I don't
as
have too
a
much issues with
stem.
it. It's great. I
That's
love it.
hilarious.
It's
Yeah.
literally what it is though. Um, so yeah, I think, choosing bit by bit, like starting with the stimming, starting with, maybe I'm gonna tell people, I'm autistic. Could you clarify that for me directly? Just and having little
Yeah.
scripts. Like for me, I write scripts for everything. Like I find it so much easier. Like it just makes my life feel more not in control, but like, simpler. Like, I feel like I understand things better. So even writing, preparing something to say, like if someone says, you've never done that, why are you doing it? Just saying, even if you don't want to tell someone autistic, saying, oh, I've just found that this really helps me, so I'm going to do it from now on. And like having set phrases means when someone asks you and you don't know, you get uncomfortable, you know what to say.
Right.
And I think that's been helpful for me. So a lot of the times I say, "Oh, I'm autistic. I need extra time. Could you, give me a moment?" Like I'll say something like that. I said that all the time at uni, and like kind of phrase specific phrases.
Yeah.
But I also think explaining to people like you've actually always had these traits. Like for me, I have always been stimming. I just did it in my head and I repress it. And I created an entire, do you remember I created that entire language based on letters and I would type, write them out on my finger because I was doing it really small. And even in my diagnosis, he wrote that I didn't fidget very much because I was doing it all under the table
Yeah.
because it's just intuitive to hide it, to be less. And so I think explaining to someone, actually, I've always struggled with, sarcasm or direct communication. I've just played along, I've just pretended, and telling people that actually these traits are not new. I've just had to suppress them because the world I'm living in doesn't fit me. But now I'm trying not to. And I think when you explain that to someone, because they've just gone, oh, you've got diagnosed and suddenly you're acting all autistic. But if you've actually explained the difficulty and they realize actually this is not easy for you,
Yeah.
I think that personal connection is really helpful as well.
I
Like I remember feeling really uncomfortable around one of my like long-term friends, and I actually sat down and explained that actually this is helping me. I've always done this, but now I'm not going home crying every day. I'm actually able to live my life normally because of these small things. And I think for them, they've never questioned it once. They're like, actually, you're so right. You have always done this.
yeah.
So I think that's also,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people make judgments before thinking. I think a lot of autistic people think, like when someone does something annoying, I'm like, oh, but maybe this has happened. Maybe they're overwhelmed. Maybe they're autistic. And I go through this thing where I basically justify people's actions because I'm like, well, maybe they've had a bad day. Where there's no typical people go, oh, I don't like what they're doing. And they just, that's it.
Yeah.
It's really weird. And so, and not always, of course, but it's just something I've noticed. So I think as an autistic person, if someone starts acting different, we're probably going to notice that pattern and go, oh, maybe they're happier doing this. But a neurotypical person might go, oh, they're just being different. And they don't,
Difficult.
yeah,
Yes.
they don't think
Yeah.
much more into it all the time.
Yeah.
So I think it's re recognizing that as an autistic person, our brains work differently.
Yeah.
So sometimes just sitting someone down and explaining it to them on that, personal level allows people to understand more, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think you're also, that's a really good point that people you've known for a long time, they will recognize a lot of the stuff that you've been suppressing are
Mm,
actually things that you do anyway, right? And
yeah.
so it's really like, as far as I'm concerned, I understand you better, but I don't feel that you're that different.
Mm,
You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't say that since your diagnosis, you have become a different person. Like you're the exact same
mm,
person, but some of
yeah.
your behaviors, or not even behaviors, some of your activities and some of your, yeah, behaviors, I guess, have become more natural. That's really what I would say.
Mm,
Is I feel you are much more natural in yourself. Um,
mm,
and I think I said in the last video as well, I just feel like your level of stress has just
mm,
gone down a lot. And that is really this kind of feeling of keeping everything suppressed. Um,
yeah.
yeah, so in answer to that, I guess it is just kind of exactly like you say, one little bit at a time and see what happens, right? I think you're right. That's a great
Yeah.
um, some great advice there. So the last thing I want, well, and then we'll go on to if there's anything else, but there was also a question around friends and community, like how do you build a network of friendships and community of support? Any advice on that?
Yeah, so we kind of talked about like who to tell you're autistic to, but I've actually found that going into new relationships, being open about it, has really helped.
Yeah.
Because it means, if I need to suddenly leave, there's not going to be like the harsh judgment. They're going to understand that, oh, I'm just autistic. Or if I say, can we hang out for 2 hours and I want it to be 2 hours, they'll know that when I just, and I think it's just a lot of the judgments that can be placed upon autistic people won't really be there because they're already going to know you're autistic. And I
Yeah.
think that for me has been really helpful. I think also making other neurodivergent friendships because even if, like my partner's got ADHD and even though we're quite different in how our neurodivergence work, there's still that understanding that we both share of like, we're both trying to live in a world not made for us. We can
Yes.
bond over that no matter what is different about you. It was like my one of my best friends is she's got OCD and BPD, which are two things I've, never related to, but we're both neurodivergent, and just because of that, we have so many things in common, even though our actual neurodivergence is different. But it doesn't matter. There's so many shared experiences. So I think finding communities of neurodivergent people who just get it, you don't have to explain it to them because they'll get it.
Yeah.
I think has been really helpful because I think it's the explaining myself bit that I hate because
Yes.
I think I shouldn't be having to do this. The world should be suited to everyone. I don't want to have, it doesn't. And I think in a couple of decades, it will be like that, hopefully. But, at this point, we still have, I still have to, like, I had to explain to someone that autism is not a mental health condition the other day. Like, they thought I was mentally ill because I'm autistic. I'm like, like, there's still not, I think
Yeah.
for me, I don't want to have to explain that. So making neurodivergent friends and even if they're not neurodivergent, letting them know this is where I'm different at the beginning. Not necessarily telling them this is where I'm different, but just being autistic, being yourself,
Yeah.
I think is a big helpful part of finding those communities.
Yes, yes, yes. I totally agree with you. And like you say, it's kind of like striking new friendships and just not masking, right? So going in
Yeah.
the way that you want to carry on being with that person.
Yes,
And then they're
exactly.
either going to like it and accept it or they're not. And then you're going to know pretty quick.
Yeah, and sometimes like I went to uni and I made a bunch of friends, and then I had an autistic meltdown in public. And it was very interesting because they knew I was autistic, and it was very much that was like, of course we accept your autistic traits. Then I actually showed my autistic traits, and suddenly they didn't like it. And I think that was a really good way to show me that you can, there's some people will just be, oh yeah, it's fine, and but still not actually accept it. So it can be difficult, but I think when you do go out there showing your autistic traits people that will keep you around will clearly are clearly there for you, are clearly good people to keep around. And I think from that experience, for me, the people who stayed afterwards were the important ones, and they still are, the
Yeah.
important ones in my life. So it was at the time it felt bad because people were, super judgmental and they wouldn't say it, but that weird feeling where it just never fully recovered. But then, it did mean the good from it was that people who stayed are still, all important people in my life. Like they're all the good ones, basically, in my mind.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, I think
Yeah. And
that's
it's not to sugarcoat it either, because you have said that it is difficult, right? To find
yeah. And I
community,
think
find
same thing with the
friends.
old friendships. Sometimes those won't always, it is difficult to almost. But I think also, if you've been masking so long, are they friends with the mask or are they friends with you? And I think grappling with that is quite difficult. And for
Yeah.
me, most of my friendships, they clearly were friends with me because we're still friends.
Yeah.
But there are some people that it's not really the same. And I think it's okay to let those go because it's not you they're friends with. And then every time you see them, you're going to want to put on the mask of who they were friends with. And it's, I think communities that you find should be based on what you enjoy. And again, like what benefits you.
Yeah.
Um, and if it's more stress than it's worth, then it's
Uh,
not good to
it-
keep.
exactly. You might as
And
well
that
just,
was hard for me to learn. It took me a long time to realize just let them go. But
yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, I think it's hard for all of us, isn't it, in terms of
mm,
when you're going through something like this and you suddenly realize because you're going through such a big catch up yourself,
mm,
right? In
yeah.
terms of that kind of thing. So,
And I think, oh, sorry.
sorry.
I was just gonna say, I think also online communities are always an option. Like, I didn't make any close friends or, good friends from them necessarily. And I'm not in touch with anyone, but I think, I definitely went out looking for autistic communities, autistic spaces when I was first diagnosed to ask questions. I asked so many, like I remember asking, like, DMing this Instagram account. I had like a whole community thing where people could talk, and I was like, what's stimming? And this random person on the internet gave me this like page-long answer. And it was just like this, I've never talked to them again, but it was just that idea of like there's this whole group of people, like there are millions of autistic people. Like in the UK alone, there's thought to be like over a million autistic people. Like
Wow.
there's a lot of it's currently thought to be 1% of the population, but we think now it's probably about six.
Yeah.
Not six, it's much higher. So, that's millions of people. That's like a billion autistic people pretty much in the world. Like there are a lot of us. And I think, finding those little communities online to ask questions, to, pe to have a space where anything you say pretty much about your experience, someone will relate to, someone will get. That was so important to me because I thought I was like the only one like this. I felt very isolated. I wasn't friends with any autistic people growing up. Like when I was diagnosed, I was the only autistic person I knew. Well,
Well, actually,
they've been
it's
since
since turned out that there's lots of
since being
autistic people
diagnosed.
and in our family as well. Go figure.
Yeah,
You were
we swapped
surrounded by
together.
autistic people, actually.
But yeah, but like not knowing that, you do think, oh, I'm all alone.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so I think, now knowing there's a lot of people I did grow up with were actually autistic, I was like, oh my God, so they were actually going through the same thing I was the whole time. If
Yeah,
only we talked about it out loud.
I know. It's so
That's
weird.
why sometimes it is good to say it out loud because someone you might not expect might go, oh my God, I have that all the time.
Or
You know?
maybe part of the reason why you all kind of actually got on fine was because there was an underlying current of acceptance because
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was and the same with family, right? Like it was never that difficult in family because half
Mm.
cousins are autistic. So you were
Yeah.
actually in very good company already.
I always felt very comfortable and I loved all the family events. And I think that's
That's
probably a big
why.
part of it. It was the most autistic people I would see once a year.
Exactly. We're a very neurospicy lot.
Yeah.
Oh dear. So there was the final thing that we're going to cover is just any resources or books um,
Hmm.
for adults as a because there are a lot around children, parents of autistic children, that kind of thing. But anything that you would recommend?
Well, I kind of mentioned earlier, like there's lots of Instagram accounts. I do actually have one that I could show that for me, she's I think my age, and was diagnosed maybe late teens, so like kind of, not massively late diagnosed, but a similar thing. And so for me, just looking for accounts like that was really helpful.
Yeah.
Um,
And on YouTube, there's quite a lot of
yeah, YouTube's got really
um,
good ones.
yeah,
There's
they've
this
got
one,
accounts.
Neurodivergent Lou.
Ah, cool.
I found really helpful. She has the same job as me, and she talks in Parliament about it a lot, which is quite
Oh,
cool.
wow.
Um, but yeah, she posts a lot of like tips as well, but also you know like autistic people often like this post, autistic people often need more time and talking about why, how you can ask for reasonable adjustments, like things that can just be really helpful in adult life. Like she's works full or part time, so she's. But there's also this book, Women and Girls with Autism Spectrum Disorder,
And
that
just throw
talks.
it up with the author.
Oh, sorry.
We'll put the link
By
in actually.
Sarah Hendricks. We could always put it in the caption.
Yeah, I will. I'll put it in the cap.
But yeah, I found this book. This was you actually bought it
Yeah, that
when
was
I was
super
getting
helpful.
diagnosed because you wanted to understand. And it talks about all the way from early childhood to old age. So it talks about, and it does talk about, being undiagnosed at childhood as well, but it kind of goes through the entire life
Yeah,
cycle. And she, the author, was diagnosed as like in her 40s or something.
yeah, that's right.
She wrote a whole book about her husband being autistic
That's
and
so
what it's like from a non-autistic perspective. And then as she wrote it, she went and realized she was autistic.
I love
So
that.
that book's probably
That
not very
story
valid
is
anymore.
really the
But this is her after being diagnosed. So I think it's quite like I found it really helpful. I actually ended up going through and highlighting it and talking about like things that because she does talk about some things that can be useful. So like I would like write notes in it and write like, things I thought, oh, I'm gonna try do that and stuff like that.
yeah. So that might be cool. And there are much more
The
since
loads.
as back that was only 5 or 6 years ago, right? That we bought that.
Mm.
But since then, I've noticed a
I
lot.
know of some actually this account, the Neurodivergent Lou, has a whole post about recommended books
Oh,
um that are really good.
okay,
There was a
perfect.
bunch I wanted to read, but yeah, it's somewhere on her account, so that's also
Yeah,
something good if you want to find it.
amazing. All right, guys. I think that's probably enough for now. So, yeah, if you want a part three, let us know. Put questions in. We'll keep going until you tell us to shut up.
Your whole channel is going to be autism
Yeah,
soon.
autism. It's just gonna. I'm gonna be like, okay, we've moved from Reiki, and now we've moved from non-duality, and now we're just all about autism. Okay, guys.
Autism.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Ella. Bye.